literally nothing. It would have been very good if we did, because we're operating out of the old perspective which we were in. Hence the colorway too, because I've realised that this helps you identify the most recent bar close and really hone in on how that most recent bar closed the way it did amongst the region of whatever push and play is in play, basically. But anyway, this was the possible entry. So this bar, as you see, kind of closes a strong 15M bar close, and then this bar kind of closes like a weak, just standard strong 15M close, but it wasn't a strong convicted, like proper wick rejection to the upside, minimal wick down to the downside, and closing as a bearish close right at its lows, basically. Which is why I needed to see another 15M bar close, basically, and well, we didn't get it. But, and to be honest, with this kind of price action, I'm happy I'm not in this, and like, I mean, to be honest, I don't think this sort of price action would be unraveling if this bar did close a strong bar close, and then that would also signify what sort of conviction is present, basically, with how participants are trading. But ultimately, all willing to trade, let's say, but ultimately all you care for shit about is how the most recent bar closed the way it did amongst the region of the push that's in play, and then look for a setup on the side of that. You don't care about, even if like this bar did close a bit as a bearish strong close at its lows, the setup would still be kind of iffy. But even with this price action unraveling, it could still come lower, and it does kind of look okay for that. But I mean, it doesn't matter because we're not in. We are not obliged to get in. And then, well, Euro, this would have been absolutely beautiful if it did close as a strong bearish close, which it just had to close bearish, basically, and then we would have got in. And to be honest, I probably would have. I mean, if it closes, because like look at this wick rejection too. So and then like you would have been in about there. It just literally had to close the doji, to be honest. And then you would have been in. Damn, that's a big stop, isn't it? 90 pips. So what does 10 pips look like? I'm just wondering. I would not be having a 10 pip stop on this, but damn, that's insane, man. Sometimes I'd be having a 10 pip stop. That's pretty crazy, eh? Shit. To be honest, I think that's a bit too low, so to be honest, I would just have it there. So we still wouldn't even be at TP yet, but to be honest, that looks good to go. But only if it closes a bearish close, and I mean, you kind of see like how this recent bar kind of closes a wick rejection at the highs of its push, at the highs of the same push to the upside, kind of wick rejecting at the highs of, and then you got this heavy wick reject bar closing at its like low end region, but still just not as a bearish close. But like this, you see that this was kind of a heavy close right at its highs, and then this was kind of an iffy strong close. So that's why you needed to either see this bar close right at its lows, and that would have been like a straight sell signal. No wonder I'm not going to lie, I did actually get in, and I kind of FOMO'd in here, but I got out here. So, but basically, if this bar did close at its lows, oh yeah, no, this is what I was gonna say, but like, I knew subconsciously that this wasn't a sell, because it closed right at its highs, and then also with the 1 hour, which we'll get on to, not being that strong of a close, it's just like you really want to see a strong convicted close, basically, either from here on the 1 hour close or this bar closing a strong close, which it just didn't. Closed with a weight rejection right at the lows of its push to the downside, at the low region of its push to the downside, which you just wouldn't want to get in at the lows of. But what I'm thinking of possibly kind of somewhat coming up with, I don't know though, but like, I mean, if you're looking for a retracer here, right, and it's kind of high probable that it's going to retrace, and then you're needing to look for a nice 1 hour close, well then why wouldn't you look for like a setup to get on board this, you know? I mean, yeah, I know that I've been in this mindset before, and sometimes when you're looking for the best case scenario to deal with how the 1 hour setup as of the situation at hand, which we may as well go on to, based on also how the narrative of the given session, basically all comprised of how numerous time frame recent bar closes have closed the way they have, or amongst the region of what push is in play, that the most recent bar closes, we're looking at how they closed, being sat amongst, and what that region is. So in this case, you see that this push in play at the downside, push up higher, weak reject, at the very high region, overextended high region, and then a push and play emerges to the downside. The most recent bar closed with a wick rejection to the downside, right at the very low overextended region on the push to the downside. So you wouldn't want to sell. You wouldn't want to look for ISL QS right off the bat, because it could form, and then you could just be took out. So basically on this, and plus it was also based on also the likeliness of the market moving to the downside today, based on how, like I said, all the other time frame recent bar closes, like the recent bar close on the 2, the 4, the 7, the 8, no, well in this case the 2, the 3, the 4, the 8, the 9, the 12, the daily, and then some of these, and how the weekly current in play bars forming the way it is, because I mean that's closer to being done than not. So you can kind of just look at it as of its current actual in play setup state, or formed state, how it's formed as of now in play real time. But how the most recent bar closes relative to all these time frames closed the way they did amongst the region of whatever pushes in play, suggesting to you what the most probable direction is that likely should occur, basically based on if you wick rejection at the very highs, then of an overextended push at the upside, then you should reject, right, and you should come down. But of course that's then contingent upon how low our time frames set up here. So on this given day, I know I'm kind of reversing it, and it's usually a top down instead of up, instead of down top analysis. You can kind of see that, I note that on this day the market was rejecting right at the very high region of many pushes to the upside. Fucking hell. And it was set up nice for a reversal, but that's also contingent upon how low our time frames are set up. And in this case, the 1 hour recent bar closes a decent range expansion bar at the downside, but closed with a wick rejection right at the very low overextended region of a push to the downside. So it had a nice range expansion to the overextended region, but then it wick rejected right at the very low region, suggesting a possible push higher. And then based on the which we'll get onto in a sec, the 4 hour and stuff, yeah, the 4 hour, well I mean we can just go on to it, but I think it was the 3 hour on this. Yeah, so of course, so on Oanda, you're looking at the 3 hour, but if you're on active trades, you're looking at the 4. So that's why I do that, and I look at both. But anyway, you see that there's a short-term push in play at the upside that the market sat right at the very highs of wick rejecting at the very high region, closing as a bearish bar, signaling or in other words signifying that a reversal is coming and near playing out. But because you're topping out at the very high overextended region of a short-term push to the upside, I mean a reversal is coming basically. But how the most recent bar closed amongst the region of its push to the upside, you will see that it closed at the very high overextended region as a bearish wick reject bar closing relatively near its lows, but with a slight wick rejection to the lows, to the downside, which would have to be investigated on lower time frames, which, as you can see on the 2 hour, you can see that okay, well the 2 hour doesn't really provide much of a good signal, just looks like it's kind of wick rejecting at the highs with short term push to the upside, likely to come lower. But the 1 hour shows it perfectly that I mean the most recent 1 hour bar closed right at the low overextended region, wick rejecting at the very low region of a push to the downside, which was overextended. You see push up, come lower, you're right at the low overextended region of the push to the downside where rejecting. You definitely do not want to sell off the bat here. You want to look for the appropriate fit pull and then retrace and then nice 1 hour bar close. Now, which is also like on the basis of how all other time frames are set up. So like to push in like the probability, so like and all of the time frames are kind of just weight rejection the very high region of their push, signaling that like a reversal is likely to set up, basically, whether it just plays out suddenly or it sets up a bit more appropriately. Anyway, this bar closed with too much of a range expansion body close to the upside. It's got a heavy range expansion body close to the upside. Yes, it wick rejected, but there's no way that you would want to sell this or look for sales, start to look for sales, basically. So it's like, yeah, completely out of the question. Because I mean, like, you come down, wick reject kind of, and you just shoot up to the upside with a very strong, like, heavy body close, like, right at its highs. I mean, yes, it's at the overextended region and it is wick rejecting, but it's just like, it's not a sufficient bar close. You'd want to see how the next 1 hour bar closes. And anyway, this just cuts it with its wick rejection being basically bigger or just the same as the body. That's what you want. And this, you see how small the wick is compared to the body. It's just like not it's just not comparable. Anyway, this just cuts it, but you know, you would want to see a strong 15M bar close. But to be honest, now that I'm looking at this more, this definitely cuts it. This is a nice 1 hour wick rejection at the very high overextended region of a push to the upside. So yeah, but like I said, you definitely would also want to see a strong 15M close, and then you see this, right? So the most recent 15M close with a slight wick rejection to the upside, yeah, or rather to the downside. It closed with a nice wick rejection on the upside, and just after a strong 15M closed relatively near its highs. You know, it's just iffy. You'd want to wait for the next bar. Maybe if the next bar, for example, opened, wick rejected and closes relatively near its lows, as like with no bullishness, then yeah, you could just sell, definitely. But anyway, that wasn't the case, and you wick rejected again at the lows. But if we do the top-down analysis, basically it was also on the basis of the probability of the direction being to the downside too. So it like of maybe it's why I at first said that the one I wasn't strong, like wick rejection close. But to be honest, it kind of looked good. I'm looking at it again, but anyway, you see the most recent daily bar close and where it closed amongst the region of the push that's in play. Close right at its highs, at the high region. Sorry. With a slight wick rejection at the very high region of, which is an overextended push to the upside. That you wick rejected on the very high region of, which, like, I mean, it's never really a good sign, to be honest, that, for further higher. Anyway, the most recent 12-hour bar close, you're at the highs of a short-term push to the upside, high extended region of a short-term push to the upside, wick rejecting the lows, push higher, wick rejecting the very high overextended region, signaling the possible a reverse can come lower. Again, contingent upon how lower time frames are set up. Entirely contingent upon lower time frames. Because if, like, for example, if this bar closed at its highs, that would be great for higher. And then, like, you know, there is still somewhat bullishness there. Yes, you're at the overextended high region, which the daily and 12-hour would be wick rejecting at the very high region of. But if then other time frames were kind of set up also quite bullish, then yeah, it would definitely make sense that bullishness could occur. But anyway, you see that isn't the case, and the 9-hour is just at the very overextended region of a push to the upside. That the most recent bar close is sat at the very high overextended region of wick rejection at the very high region. So and it just based on this wick rejection, it's, I mean, I can't, just because I've just got back into the perspective, I can't quite remember what it was that I would constitute, like, what I definitely would have had some sort of systematic parameter to justify, and wasn't just purely out of experience of what a strong uh, wick reject kind of close would be. But I'm pretty sure it was in proportion to the body. Now that I'm thinking, anyway, it would make sense to do that. But anyway, this is a strong wick rejection. Like I said, in proportion to the body. That's at the very high overextended region of a push to the upside, which is just signaling basically that, like, I mean, you're either likely to further wick reject and suddenly reverse, or just keep wick rejecting at this region, edging closer to the reversal, or just purely reverse. But like, you can kind of get an idea of what out of those scenarios is likely to occur based on how lower time frames are set up. And anyway, the 8 hour, you see, you're just closing with like a it's a decent range expansion bar to the upside again, but it's wick rejecting right at the very high region of that push to the upside, right? So it's like with the 9 hour also kind of with a strong wick rejection at the very high region of, it's likely that further signs do start to occur that suggests it's going to top out. Anyway, the 4 hour, it's just a doji, basically. Doji wick rejection bar closed right at the overextended high region of a push to the upside. You know, it's just signaling that it's likely to just further wick reject and just nearing the reversal / retracement. Basically, you sat right. The most recent bar close is sat right at the overextended region of push to the upside. Wick rejecting at the very high region of a push that's already begun wick rejecting at the very high region and closes a doji, basically. Or very weak bullish bar close, just signifying that, like, it's likely to just retrace soon. What I mean by soon is you don't know exactly when, but in the next couple of bars you'll probably find out, basically. Then the 3 hour is set up pretty good and awesome. It's sat at the highs of a push that's already begun wick rejecting, and then you got a wick reject bearish bar close right this high overextended region of this short-term push to the upside. But this wick rejection would need investigating, basically. But like I said as well, you got to remember the context of what other time frames too, and pair that in with the universal territory that the market's sat at basically, with like how other recent time frame bar closes have closed the way they have. Amongst the regions, and made like this close at the high overextended region of a short-term push to the upside, close the bearish wick rejection, decent bar close, but with a slight bottom side wick rejection to the upside, at this like overextended high region of the push that's already begun wick rejecting at the very high region of, you know, it's likely that possibly you just, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, with the 9 hour kind of wick rejecting the very highs too, it is likely to it would be likely to reverse, basically. And then the 2 hour backs that case up even more. It's just wick rejecting and topping at the top and out region of its push to the upside short term again, just wick rejecting at the very highs. It's likely to reverse, basically. And then anyway, again, here's the context with the 1 hour, and hopefully we'll come to that understanding of why we wanted to see that another 1 hour bar close. Of why the 1 hour 9 a.m. bar close was kind of just sufficient. But anyway, yeah, you got to push the upside, push lower. You're at the very low overextended region of wick rejecting at the very lows, suggesting a reversal is likely to come up. And so based on all the time frame recent bar closes, what you would want to see is a nice 1 hour bar close. Wick rejection at this region, basically a sufficient first initial intent exhibit of the day bar close, which is just like a stood out wick rejection, basically, as a prominent wick rejection, which I'm pretty sure is in proportion to its body, like this, or like this. This wouldn't be sufficient. You'd want to see the next bar. This also wouldn't be sufficient. Too much of a bottom side wick rejection. This would be sufficient. This would be sufficient. This would be sufficient. Just actually based on the context of like what region this wick rejection is occurring. I've been at the very high overextended region. Yeah, so I think this would just be sufficient to probably but it would be a bit iffy to be honest. Anyway, but yeah, I'm just just hypothesizing if this was like at that 9 a.m. 1 hour bar close. You know, it's also under the context of the given narrative playing out, right? Basically, of like what primary movement is likely to occur. But anyway, this is likely to come up higher at first, but like, I mean, he has when it like, I mean, you could definitely take like a risky entry. You could just drop down to the 5M and basically, I don't know. You could definitely form some sort of risky thing, but it's like, it probably would be only based on days where the market is actually likely to retrace, and this is a day where it is likely to move from here to here, very likely, to be honest. Anyway, you then come lower, you just the fib. This bar closes pretty darn bullish, with a nice rejection right at the low region of a push to the downside, closing relatively at its highs. At the low overextended region of a push, which has already began with rejection at the very lows of, and then you get a strong bullish bar close at that low overextended region, closing as a very strong bullish bar close at that low overextended region that already began bottoming out at that low region with rejection at the very lows, and then closing as a strong bullish bar close right at its highs. It's likely that the reversal is in play from this point, and it just pushes higher. So you would definitely want to see a strong, nice first initial intent wick rejection bar close. This is definitely not sufficient. You've got a heavy range expansion bar to the up. Like, look, this is very clean. You've just got like a straight push higher, wick rejection at the very high overextended region. But like, look at how much body this candle has. It's like, it's too much. You would want like a. I honestly think it's in proportion to the body. Anyway, because it is good to be somewhat systematic with things. I definitely do think that. I mean, like, yeah, so this is just cutting it, to be honest. Based on the context of where this recent bar close is closing amongst the push in players region, being at the very highs. You do have a strong wick rejection, but if this bar closed about here, you know, that's too much body. But this is just actually perfect. So then you go down to the 15M, but like it is a bit iffy, to be honest. Like, it's not like, also it's like how other time frames are set up. It's like the 9 hours just wick rejection, the very overextended high region, etc, etc. There's no, like, for example, confirmation like or bearish bar close even at this region, like off, which has already been like topping out, for example. You know, and it would just make sense that, yeah, the reversal's likely to possibly just take hold all of a sudden. Like, there could be some further topping out at this region, but it is also quite a strong wick rejection at the overextended high region, etc, etc. But like, anyway, this bar didn't cut it for me. If it closed more near its lows, yeah, definitely, but this just too much of a wick rejection to the upside. So that's why I wanted to wait for the next bar. And anyway, which is my last bar. And anyway, this bar did close a decent range expansion bar at the downside, but closed with a wick rejection at the very low region of this push to the downside, suggesting that it could push higher. And yeah, it did, but like, it just wasn't strong enough. So yeah, this doesn't look good, does it? It just looks shit. But who knows? It could just drop off a cliff. Plus, there's also news today. What the hell? What is this news? PPI. So the key notes to take away from this are, whoa. The anchor text tool will be removed soon. Use the text tool with the anchor option switched on to get the same results. Okay. don't know what that was. I just had to check just in case cat was hanging on the blinds or something because Jade fell off or something, and I was just wondering if she was hanging on the blinds. It's not good. But she's not. She just flung herself off the windowsill because it's very hot today. Yeah, so this is the point to take away, and yeah, so the sufficient number of our clothes is determined on the basis of the wick reject in proportion with the amount of body the candle has, and basically you want to see large enough, basically, and basically you want to see a larger wick than body or relatively the same. Yeah, so the way is always on the basis of the overall universal narrative, told on the basis of the context extracted from all time, how all time frame balls have closed the way. However, they have amongst whatever region of the push that's in play that the routed bar close formed the way it did is sat amongst, and motorcycle phase / movements what should unfold as a result of the region that the most routed bar closed in the fashion / way it did, like while being sat amongst the region of whatever push is in play. Or most prominent push, what has been played, that for example the market is way rejecting the very high low region of the push, what was in play, that the market is chilling at the very high low region of, just getting ready of this, consolidating. Right, yes, so there we go. So that's basically all the points, and then you put together basically what direction you want to see, and you put and yeah, it's gay as hell. But it is what it is. I remember shit like this did used to also happen. So, let me just take this off.